Welcome to the show. Today's good news moment is brought to you by Good Spy. And check this out. Before we go into this, man, we'd like to welcome a special guest into the house. This guy goes by the name of Maz Jobrani. But Jobrani, I don't know why I said Jobrani. I know how to say your name.
It's the wrestler thing, man.
I don't know. I think it's the boxing. Too many blows to the head. So we're gonna go in. We're gonna go in a minute with Maz. But before we do, we like to get into a good spy story, as we always like to start the show off with. Today's Good Spy news moment is brought to you by Good Spy and comes out of Chicago, Illinois, where CNBC's The Prophet Marcus Lemonis sent a lifelong Cubs fan to the World Series. 97-year-old World War II veteran Jim Schlegel had been waiting 71 years to see his team make it back to the World Series. But unlike most, he was actually at Chicago's Wrigley Field to experience it the last time around in 1945. With overwhelming demand for the chance to see the Chicago Cubs win their first World Series in over a century, sending ticket prices as high as $21,000 on the secondary market, according to ticket aggregator SeatGreek, Schlegel had all but given up on the idea he'd be able to go. To help, his granddaughter set up a GoFundMe page with the goal of raising $10,000 for 2 tickets to the game and hope for the best. The popularity of the GoFundMe page spread virally on social media, and Marcus Lemonis caught word of it. He decided to reach out and get in touch with the family to offer them 2 front-row tickets to Game 3 at Wrigley Field, and they gladly accepted. Donning a Cubs hat, Schlegel took to Twitter to thank Lemonis for giving him an experience of a lifetime. To top it off, the Cubs won the World Series, making Jim Schlegel the happiest man alive. For more good news, as well as daily motivational and empowering content, download the Good Spy app today on Google Play or iTunes. Ladies and gentlemen, Maz Jobrani is in the house. What's up, homie?
How you doing, man?
Hey, man. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy the timing worked out.
My man. I've been looking forward to interviewing you, man, since I did the show. You know, last time you were here.
Yeah.
I was like, man, got to get you on the show. I'm starting the podcast. Got to get you on the show.
I'm in, man.
Man, you got this unique thing going about yourself, man, where you're one of the few Iranian American comics and actors.
Yeah.
And so you go through a whole lot of shit in Hollywood, I'm assuming.
Yes, sir.
You know, now I've seen you act a number of times, and I know one of the things that I see that irks you, really, it don't irk you, it pisses you off.
Yeah.
They're always trying to typecast you as the dude to blow something up.
Oh, yeah.
What's up with that?
Well, you know, I wrote a book about it. I call it, the book's called I'm Not a Terrorist, but I've Played One on TV.
Right.
Because what happens is like, first of all, I grew up in Northern California. Right. And growing up, I did plays. I love doing plays. And so in those plays, I played Little Abner in one of the plays, who's like this country, kid, with a southern drawl. I played in that. In high school, I got to play Batman. Right. I got to play all these cool roles,
right?
And I thought, oh wow, I get to go to Hollywood, and I'll get to be Batman. I'll get to
really
be
flex.
Yeah, I get all this stuff, and you show up in Hollywood, and when they find out that you're of Middle Eastern descent, the types of auditions you start going out on, they tend to be terrorist parts,
right? And
so early on in my career, I started having some of those auditions. And at the same time, look, there were some other auditions that come about that were like, security guard or whatever it is, like, lawyer, whatever. But there was a lot of terrorist parts. And what I came to realize quickly was that the people writing those movies they tend to come from another background. They tend to have older white dudes writing these scripts.
They tend to be white males.
White males, exactly.
What it is,
yeah.
Man,
so it's like, so what do they know when they're writing a movie? They know what they've seen in the news, and what they've seen in the news about Middle Easterners is that we're terrorists.
Right.
So I don't know what the exact percentage is, but a high percentage of the time you end up with these types of parts. There's actually a gentleman by the name of Jack Shaheen. He's a professor, and he wrote a book called Real Bad Arabs, REEL, Bad Arabs. He studies Arabs, Iranians, Muslims in movies over like several thousand movies, and he shows how there's so many negative depictions and of Middle Eastern people, and then he also argues that once you depict those people in that way, then when you want to go to war with that country or that part of the world, it becomes that much easier to sell the war because you go, look, they're animals, let's go attack them. So people don't break it down like that. People don't think about that, but that is the truth. It dehumanizes this whole culture, right? So I did.
This sounds so much like my story.
It is, man.
It sounds so much like the black experience.
It is.
Where they go out and they just demonize black people and they show black people in a negative light so much that it's easier when they attack black people for people to accept it.
Absolutely.
They say, they're animals, they need to be treated this way. They need to be leaned on.
Absolutely. And the fact is, like, I learned, so early in my career, I'm an actor, I'm just taking whatever I get. So I ended up doing a couple of parts where they were terrorist parts. And it was kind of silly, to be honest with you. Like, one of them was a Chuck Norris movie of the week. It was called The President's Man, A Line in the Sand. And I was playing this Afghan terrorist who was going to blow up a building in Chicago. And I'm so dumb that I convinced myself that through my acting, I'm going to show why this guy's doing what he's doing. Because as an actor, when you get a part, you're supposed to write the biography of the character before the movie started. What was his background? So I wrote the biography. I had this thing in my head, and I was like, I'm going to do this real. I'm going to do it right. So I went down to the wardrobe fitting. It was in Dallas, actually. Went down to the wardrobe fitting, and they go, here's your shirt, here's your pants, here's your turban. And I go, wait a minute. I'm trying to get this right. I go, Afghans in America don't wear turbans.
Right.
I go, Indian Sikhs wear turbans.
Right.
Afghans don't. And the lady was like, well, the producers want you to wear a turban. And I said, well, you tell the producers I've done my research, and I shouldn't be wearing a turban. So it was this thing where they're going back and forth, and she was cool enough, and she comes back the next day, and I go to my trailer, and there's a shirt, there's pants, and there's what looks like a scarf. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll wear a scarf. And she was like, no, that's the turban. You just got to wrap it back up. And I was like, what? And she goes, I talked to the producers, and they want the turban. So it became this thing of the turban. And then I came to realize later that Chuck Norris's brother, Aaron Norris, was the exec producer. And his son, Eric Norris, was the director. And Eric, obviously, is a younger dude. I talked to Eric. I go, Eric, I shouldn't be wearing the turban. And he's like, you know what? I didn't want the turban either. But my uncle, who's the exec producer, wants the turban. And I realized that the uncle's coming from an older school mentality. Right. And the uncle's thinking, our fans, when they watch this movie, if this guy's got a turban on, they can recognize the bad guy, right away.
Right.
So it was just some stupid stuff, and I felt bad doing it. And it was kind of like what you just said. I felt like what it would have probably felt for like a black actor who sold out and took a part.
Right. And speaking of that, how much beef do you get from your people when you play these type of roles?
Well, at that time, it was early in my career, so nobody from my community really knew who I was, and they didn't seem to care as much. I mean, I think I took it a step further. Like, being the person that's in it, I made it political because I didn't have anybody from my community necessarily caring, because our community has come like the past 40 years. Iranians came after the Iranian Revolution of 79. So we've only been here about 40 years. So when that first generation comes, they want their kids to be lawyers and doctors, and they don't even consider a career in the arts. And so
that leads me to one of my next questions is that how did your parents come to accept you being an actor and not a doctor or a lawyer or something?
Yeah, well, again, a lot of immigrants that come to this country, I think the parents consider themselves, they go, look, we struggled to get you here. So you better not mess around. You better get into that. You better become a lawyer, doctor, engineer. That's it.
Right.
And that's not just Iranians. It's a lot of Arabs. It's a lot of Indians. There's a lot of Pakistanis. A lot of people from that part of the world. Because I think ultimately what it is, your parents want what's best for you.
Right.
And they don't necessarily, from those traditional cultures, what's best for you is not what the American mentality of what's best for you is. Son, what do you want to do? What do you love? Whatever you love, you should do. That's what's best for you.
Right.
The Middle Eastern mentality of what's best for you is you better not embarrass us.
Right.
You're gonna be a doctor, or I will kill you myself. It's like it's that kind of thing. So they wanted that, and so what happened was I started doing plays in high school, and I was good at it. And teachers would come up to my parents and be like, he could do this professionally. And my parents would be like, oh, okay. And then in the car, my dad would be like, that bitch is crazy. Like, don't listen to her. So it was like, it was on and on and on. And I actually went to undergrad. I studied political science because I thought I was going to be a professor. My parents had convinced me to be, I was going to be a lawyer. My parents had convinced me to be a lawyer. So I studied poli-sci thinking I'll go be a lawyer. Then I decided I was going to be a professor. And then it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s when I realized you live once and you got to do what you love doing.
Right.
And that was one of my dreams. So I decided to get back into acting classes. I started taking it. And at first my mom was freaking out. I swear to God, my mom was like, she's like, listen, you didn't become a lawyer. You didn't become a professor. At least become a mechanic. And I go, what? I go, what? I go, where did mechanic come in? I swear to God. And she comes, because we come from a revolution where her life was flipped upside down.
Right.
So in her mind, she thought that if a revolution happens in America, you can be a mechanic anywhere in the world.
But you know what? I know some mechanics who are millionaires.
Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being a mechanic, but it was just the idea of, and she actually said something that made sense. She goes, listen, people need mechanics. Nobody needs an actor. And I was like, you know what? That's some wise words right there. Nobody needs an actor. When was the last time someone was like, I need an actor because I can't get out of the house. I need an actor. Everyone's saying, I need a mechanic. My car broke down.
Right.
So what practically speaking, her advice is right. And it's not a dig to mechanics. It's more about the idea of they didn't understand the do what you love doing. They understood the do something that you can make money, get a trade that you can make money in. Mm-hmm. So they were hesitant, but now that they've seen my success, and more importantly, the fact that they've seen my happiness, they came around. And like my mom's like, my mom now comes to the house and she'd be like, the neighbors would like some T-shirts. I got T-shirts and DVD. Give me a couple of DVDs and some T-shirts for the neighbors. And I'm like, Mom, this costs money. She's like, well, I'm your mother, so just give it. So I'm like, all right, here you go. But that's it. They came around. And I always tell people that. I go, if you pursue your dream, your parents might push back at first. But if they see that you're serious about it and that you're passionate about it, they'll come around. You're their kid. They love you. They want your success. And once they see that you're happy, that's so important. We were just talking about that with my friend Aaron. He's a fellow comedian. He's here with me. But we were just talking about that right now, about what percentage of people actually find what they love to do and actually do it. It's not a high percentage of people.
But the thing is, though, man, you spend so much of your time doing what it is that you do to earn a living that you may as well try to find something that you really, really enjoy doing. And I tell my kids the same thing. And both of them, they're on the right track to do what they want to do in life. But it's hard for me to just fathom just grinding day in, day out and spending all of these hours doing something that I hate doing. And when it takes up so much of my time, takes away so much of my life.
Absolutely. Listen, it's no longer work when you love doing it. I mean, it is work, but it's not work. In that, like, before I got into this, I'd gotten a day job at an advertising agency. Mm-hmm. And that was just kind of a transition to work in advertising. I thought maybe I'd work in advertising and then be able to do plays on the side. And even that, it was a pretty relaxed office. But I had to get up every day, whatever it was, 9 o'clock, get in the car, drive to work, be there till 5 or 6, drive home. And I just remember a few times, 9 in the morning, driving to work. I would get to work. I didn't even remember how I got to work. I was so out of it that I wasn't excited at all. Now, flash forward to when I start doing stand-up, and people will tell me sometimes, they're like, oh my God, that must be so hard. I go, listen, from the moment I started doing it, I love doing it. So there was times where I was at the Comedy Store, for example, in Los Angeles, and they'd said, you have an 11:30 p.m. spot. And I would show up at 11:30 p.m., waiting to go up. At the time, my girlfriend, who now is my wife, she's at home, and I'm like, listen, babe, I got to go do this spot. I'll be back. And you know how it is with, like, with your lady, like, you could get in trouble if you've got night. If you work at night, it takes away from the opportunity of, like, let's go out for a romantic dinner, because you got to go work.
Right.
So I'd be like, baby, I'm going to go for a little bit. I'll be back. So I go there, like, for 11:30 spot. I'm getting ready to go on. And then, like, Andrew Dice Clay comes in, and he's like, he's going to do an hour. And we'll go, okay, now I'm going to be up at 12:30. So I got to call my lady. Hey, listen, remember at 11:30? I'll be back, like, around 12:30 or something. About to go up at 12:30. Eddie Griffin walks in, bumps me again.
Right.
And now I'm going to be up at 1:30. And the club closes at 2, by the way.
And
now,
then by the time you hit the stage, there's 5 people and still left
5
in the
people
audience.
still there, and my girlfriend's asleep, and the night's gone, and I've blown, like, the whole night went to crap. That said, I'm still excited to be on stage, and it's not work for me. It's like, I know I had to sit through that stuff. So if I didn't love this, the moment Andrew Dice Clay walks in, I'm out.
Right.
But no, I love it. I'm sitting there, I'm
You'd be like,
watching.
who the hell is he?
Yeah, who does he think he is?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So that's my point is, again, you love, like if you look at a guy like Bill Gates, they say that when he was coming up with Microsoft, that he and Steve Wozniak were, I guess, working in a garage, like, you know, for hours and days and just going and months, and, you know, they just go. So that's exactly what you just said. Find what you love doing. And so for me, coming from a culture that does not encourage that, it was me kind of rebelling against the culture. Like I am to the Iranian community what a punk rocker would be to like a Western community, or even like a rapper would be. Like you're basically saying, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna create my own thing, and you're gonna see it's gonna happen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because you know.
Well, yeah, maybe what a rapper would have been back in the late '80s or early '90s.
Exactly.
But today, damn, everybody want to be a rapper. You know. but you know, to your point about being an Iranian American actor and comedian, man, it's such a rarity, man. Like, were you ever afraid? Like, did you ever get to a point to where you was like, I don't know if this thing is going to work, or if this thing doesn't work, what the hell am I going to do?
That never came into my mind, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you 2 reasons. One reason, that the thing of, like, I've always been somebody who felt like no matter what I do, things are going to work out. I think a reason for that is I owe that to my dad a lot. My father was a self-made millionaire. He was very wealthy. He had an electric company in Iran, and so he'd made a lot of money. But he was also a very gregarious, outgoing, generous guy, and he spent his money like it was like he was like the Godfather, in that he took care of people.
Right.
And I've had people come up to me since he passed away, telling me all kinds of stories. Like, one guy, I was in Dubai doing a gig. This guy's like, "Are you Jobrani's son?" I'm like, "Yeah," and he goes, "Your father's how we got out of Iran." I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I was like newly married. I had no money. I needed an apartment. And your father owned these properties, and he told me, just move in, pay me when you can." And he goes, eventually, over the years, I was able to pay him. And he goes, when the revolution happened and we were escaping, he said, I had to sell that apartment to get the money to get out of the country. So he goes, your father basically let that happen for me. I've had several people come up and tell me things like that. So what my father did for me, too, was that he instilled a confidence in me that no matter what I do, things are going to work out. So going into this, I thought in the back of my mind, I didn't think that, I'm going to be successful, I'm going to be in the TV or whatever. What I did think was, even if I have to go get a side job as a manager at a Starbucks or something, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make my life work. So that was one thing that I had in the back of my mind, was that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. Right. And then the second thing about will it succeed or not, I didn't think about my ethnicity at all when I came into it. I just was talking about my experiences. When I first started out, there were no other Iranian American comedians. There was another guy in England, his name is Omid Jalili. He was doing it. I didn't really know him at the time. There was a handful of Arab American comedians, Ahmed, a few other guys. But now there's a whole world of them. And I think part of that has to do with just, again, what I said. It takes time for immigrants to come to this country, and then for their kids to realize that I can do this. I can be a comedian. I don't have to be an engineer or a lawyer and all that stuff. And for me, I just knew I was like, I'm going to do this, and I didn't think twice. I didn't think twice about failing.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back with Maz Jobrani. You're checking out Willie D's Reality Check. No, it's not. It's Willie D Live. You dig?